Good evening. Today is March 30th. S&P 500 basically had an inside day, trading in a narrow 20-point range inside yesterday's price range. It was trading up and down 39.50 Soja level for most of the day, and we closed down 10 points. Nasdaq was down 0.5%, while Tesla finally had an up day, up 4%. And Russell 2000 was up 1.8%. Oil was down almost 2%, as well as gold, which was down 1.75%, while bonds had an up day. Bitcoin came close to 60,000, but is back off and is now trading around 58,500. The talk of the last couple of days, as everybody knows, was the fund that blew up last week, a family office managed by Bill Hwang. And there are lots of rumors flying around, so I'm curious to see what Victor thinks about that. There are a few strange things about it. In 2012, Mr. Hwang pled guilty to insider trading of some Chinese stocks and was fined $44 million to settle and admitted guilt. How was he able to run a family office after that? How was he able to get so many billions of dollars in leverage? How did Nomura and Credit Suisse, his prime brokers, allowed him such leverage and, more importantly, allowed the exposure to the companies themselves and didn't offload it somehow or hedged it somehow? He was using some highly leveraged swap derivatives, yet he seems to be able to corner the markets. And isn't that basically a Ponzi scheme? He kept buying the same stock like Viacom every day and made it go up from 30 to 100 in a few months. So he basically, in 3 months, tripled the stock and then, ironically, lost it all in 3 days. And how did this even happen all of a sudden? Was there somebody who killed them? Who pricked that bubble that the stock lost so much money in 3 days? And of course, now everybody wants to know who is next. Are there any other cockroaches? Because it's never just one. We recently had a fund blowing up because of the GameStop stock shorting leverage. Now there is this couple of stocks. And of course, there is lots of talk about Kathy and her ARK ETF. She is long so many illiquid names in her book publicly, and some of those names, she's one of the major largest shareholder, from 15 to 20 or something like that %. Isn't she pyramiding as well, hoping that people continue the run? Who else is over leveraged there? Is leverage an issue? Victor, what do you think?
Victoria bought Credit Suisse today. All her stocks go up 500% in a few years. By the way, she sold her Tesla 2 weeks ago, so at 700. I like Credit Suisse. I like stocks that have been hit hard for a non-recurring reason. Their basic business, I don't think will, they went down from 15 or 16 to 11. And their basic business hasn't changed. They had a non-recurring loss by extending too much leverage. They must have had a very profitable arrangement with Hwang, and then all the Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, they liquidated Hwang the fastest. They didn't get hurt, so they lost maybe 1%. But I guess it was the same. The margin calls are there to protect the clearing firms. Margins are there to prevent the brokers from losing money. That's it in a nutshell. They have limits on how much you can lose each day, and that again is to prevent the brokers from losing money. And probably when they started liquidating him, he probably still had a lot of equity, but by the time his two favorite stocks, Viacom went down 55%, and Credit Suisse went down a third. So nothing. The Credit Suisse, of course, has two aspects of their business. One is laundering money for their customers, and or doing private banking. Their customers, and the other is their investment banking business, which involves extending credit at very profitable rates, and giving leverage to their preferred customers. And so except for the reputation risk, I think their business will be the same. And I found that buying stocks that have a cardinal event that's over, that has a beginning and an end point, it's a good time to buy stocks. I remember when a restaurant chain is hit by some defects in their health inspection, that's a very good time. Chipotle, when they were hit with some defects in their meat products, their stock went down to about 250. It's gone up about 400%. So you asked me what I think about the.
Well,
usually, as I say, the liquidations are to protect the brokers. Now, apparently, it snowballed so that even some of the brokers lost money. They bankrupted their customer, which is de rigueur, and Credit Suisse and Nomura lost some money. The book value of Credit Suisse is around $25, and they're selling at $10, and they've been around for 150 years, and they have a mainstay of the Swiss economy. I'm just surprised that they were a little slower than the others, so that they lost more money. Go on.
It looks to me that Victoria is moving from momentum to value stocks. Is that something that you have changed your mind on and you endorse, or is she going against the trend? Because we've been saying for a while that momentum is the way to go, and yet
no, the interest rates were down today. They can't seem to, no matter how much the progressives spend, no matter how much they replace the private sector with the government sector, and they act as a handicapper general whenever they see a problem, an opportunity, uh, be it the infrastructure or in healthcare or education. Now they're going to replace the private sector and in every aspect, acting as the handicapper general. Everybody should read Harrison Bergeron again because it's very relevant. But it was a pretty woke day. I mean, they tried to give it a down day. The market's been ricocheting around 39.50. It's been there for about a month or so. So we have the employment coming out on Friday. And the Nikkei is 29,400, so that they're close to 30,000, and the S&P is close to 4,000. Those are good goals. In general, the last few employments have been very bullish, and there's a positive serial correlation for the employment numbers. It's about 45%. The last one was up about 30 points. So this is a normal backing and filling an opportunity to the weak public to be scared out of their positions. Everything's good. I mean, we had a down day, and it was a down 0.3%. That's all they could do. I guess the main thing that's happening is gold in the 1680 level and down from the beginning of the year was around 1900. Now it's 1600. So it's gone down 12%. Bitcoin's up a nice 25%. So that's the main thing that's happening in the habitat. But you asked me about Nasdaq. I bought Nasdaq today. It's still flirting with unchanged on the year, while the S&P is up 6 or 7%. I still go with growth. I think it's and as long as they can't hit it interest rates too hard, which they can't seem to do. It's they tried to get it to 154 handle, but closed up on the day 155 and a quarter.
Well, we have a blue day today, I think.
We had a red day yesterday, and we'll have the employment number on Friday. The market will basically be closed. Everybody should have very pleasant religious holiday. Someone wrote in, it's not only the FDA that should be eliminated with their 8,000 employees in there, but Dr. Cattle and Dr. Bix they're taking credit for the entire the rollout of the vaccines, but yet the former president sort of lashed out. He knew there was something wrong. He knew that they made a lot of mistakes, as he said. Dr. Cattle wouldn't even stay in the same room with Mrs. Bix. That they he talked about the delays that they and their changes in hearts. But someday they're going to realize that everything that Dr. Cattle said was designed to help the progressives along. At every stage, he did whatever he could to further his love affair with the cattle trader. He wrote a love letter to her that she was so healthy, and that he was inspired by his love for her. If the former president would stop talking about his baseball pitches and would talk about the fact that the entire CDC and FDA, which contributes 98% to the Progressive Party, was against him, and that he had to fight them, but instead he's worrying about the strong arm of Dr. Fauci in pitching. So the push for a national passport, I think, is very dangerous also, and that is a tremendous progressive thing to make everybody carry a passport showing whether they had the vaccine or not, but they won't have an identification for voting.
Exactly.
And I think the back and forth where President Biden has lashed out against the Republicans in Georgia for demanding that there be a identification for the voters, and in a sense, and the more he does that, the greater the lead that the Democrats have over the Republicans in the betting odds. So in that sense, it was a very woke day.
Right.
Everything looks good.
I've just put up a chart back to the health and COVID that compares Florida and California, and you could see that the total COVID cases as percentage of population is pretty much identical in Florida and California. Meanwhile, here in Florida, we had no restrictions for the last half a year. Schools are in person, businesses are open, people are flying from all over the world for vacations.
Well, you also have probably extra seven years in age.
Right, the population is much older in Florida.
So that you would have expected there to be about a 25% increase of things equal. Right. But I just hope that I noticed that the governor DeSantis, he keeps narrowing the lead in terms of the likelihood that he'll be the Republican candidate. Trump is about 20% and he's about 12%. And I just hope that the former president doesn't do his normal thing and try to strike out against DeSantis, because there are too many people that dislike the self-aggrandizement.
I really hope he does, because I want DeSantis, selfishly, I want him to stay governor of Florida and not run for presidency. But, I can't imagine if we had another governor and everything would be closed now still. It's just a scary thought. And meanwhile, the CDC data has came out. It's an official government CDC data that says that nearly 80% of people hospitalized for COVID were overweight or obese. So the real pandemic that nobody is talking about is obesity and diabetes and metabolic syndrome, but not COVID. And nobody wants to talk about it because, I don't know, there is no simple pill to take for it, and exercising or diet is not in fashion, and big pharma ironically can't make money doing that, bringing it back to the big pharma. And so the vaccine is profitable, it's easy, couple of shots and that's it. But how do you make people exercise? There is no pill for that. And so obesity and epidemic, nobody wants to talk about because now it's fat shaming, it's not PC. I don't know what the solution is, but as a nation, we certainly have to address it at some point.
Well, let me just close by reiterating that it's tremendously damaging for the long-term hopes of the economy, that when a company, all the farmers, all the pharmaceutical companies have done so well and overcome all the FDA bureaucracy, and finally had their research come to fruition, hundreds of billions a year in fruition. They had some new methods of creating the vaccine, and sure enough, there's a move on to eliminate their patents and to give all the countries, the poorer countries in the world, free free access to
Right.
the patents. That's a very important thing. I mean, if you wanted to cure cancer, you could give $1 billion prize to someone who could cure it, and that would, they're doing that in space exploration, and so the rewards and incentives have a tremendous
Right. But
influence.
if
And
I if I make a slight counterpoint, it's not always about the money. For example, if you look back, there were plenty of inventions that have happened way before the patent law was put in place. That includes lots of medical inventions as well. The doctors wanted to invent stuff to have their legacy, to have their name for a country, for God. People have been doing explorations for free for decades. Shackleton is one great example. So while I understand the farmer's point, the issue is more complex, because then the question is, so let's say pharma has invented a cure for cancer, right? And can they charge $1 billion each person? Would you ever put any regulations and limits on this? If I own the patent, so give me 100 billion, give me 100 million. Give me all your wealth you've got, right? There has to be some limits, some sort of restrictions. It's I don't know how to deal with this, but it's more complex than just free for all, I would think.
well, we have to go through the history of invention of the cotton gin and the reaper, and the steam, the improvements of Newcomen's steam engine, Edison's
Right.
work. I mean, there a lot of the most of the great improvements in technology were inspired by incentives for profits, and most people respond well to monetary incentives. But with that, I think we should
Yep.
call it a day. I'm sorry I didn't have any more of substance to say. And we won't have another proverb from Galton because I lost a lot of followers somehow. The platform that eliminated, that doesn't allow former president to participate, has a very sophisticated algorithm. Anyway, we'll have a proverb from Tom Wiswell. I only have about 30,000 more of these proverbs to read. So if I live for another 10 years, we shouldn't run out of proverbs, assuming that we still have enough subscribers to keep going. Anyway, here's what Tom Wiswell's proverb of the day is: playing much, suffering much, and studying much. These are the three pillars of the game. You have to suffer a little if you're going to participate in the 50,000-fold century grift. Positive. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Victor.
Lena.
I think any great achievement requires suffering. It's like a prerequisite to achievement, whether it's in sports or pretty much any field. And just before we go, I'd like to recommend to people to watch the great TV show, The Nick. It's the TV show about Dr. Thackeray. It's based on William Stewart Halstead, doctor. He was the inventor and innovator of pioneer of many inventions in the beginning of the century. So the TV show is really great, and to see about the life and medicine back in the century, how brutal it was.
And before we go, I'd like to recommend that all our listeners go back and listen to Larry's interview with us. It was really a meal for a lifetime. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. See you tomorrow.